Hey everyone, welcome back. It is finally starting to feel like spring here in southern Manitoba, so today I'm going to be planting out my onions and brassicas, and these are my first plantings of the season, which I am very excited for, so let's go get our hands in some dirt. These are the brassicas that I'll be planting out today. I started these back in February, and there's a mix of like cabbage, broccolini, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. I did start something in the middle here, but it didn't end up germinating. Can't remember what it was. I'll have to check my notes. But these are what we'll be getting into the ground today. So this bed here is where I'll be planting out all my brassicas. This is one of 6 new beds that I built half last year and half this year. But this is the first one that I filled because I wanted to get these into the ground ASAP, because even though it's still early May, it is starting to warm up a little bit, and brassicas are cool season crops, so they don't like when it gets super warm out, so I want to get these into the ground as soon as possible, so I filled this bed first. And you can see here I have the starting of a little hoop house. This will protect them from the frost because it is still going below zero overnight, but it'll also protect them from the flea beetles, which I assume will be out in no time. So I'm just trying to decide where I want to plant everything. I have 5 of all of my varieties of brassicas, and I have 10 cabbage in total. So I was thinking maybe the cabbage in the front because they're a little bit shorter, and then the broccoli, the broccolinis, the cauliflowers, and the Brussels sprouts in the back. I have way more of those though, so some of those tall things might go in the back, but maybe I'll put them on this side so they don't shade anything else out. I think that's what I'm thinking. I think I finally have everything that I need. So I have my plants here. I have a bag of an organic all-purpose. This is a tomato and vegetable fertilizer. This is what I use every year in my garden. This and the bone meal that they make, same brand. And yeah, I think I'm gonna start off with the baby cabbage on this side of the bed because they're smaller and more compact, and then I will do the larger cabbage on that end of the garden. All right, so I'm gonna probably do 2 rows just because brassicas in general can get pretty big. And I don't wanna get too close to the end of my bed because I'm gonna have one more arch for my hoop house here. And I don't want the plants to get too squished along the edge of where the fabric is gonna lay. I did that last year, and all the plants on the edge seemed to get crowded out and they didn't grow as well. Move that down, and I'll do this one maybe around here. So for each hole, I'm going to do one little scoopful of the fertilizer, and because this is an organic fertilizer, I don't have to worry about it burning the roots of my plants. So I'm just gonna put that in just like that. My neighbors just started a huge fire. I could just see it on the other side of our trees. And then yeah, in terms of planting spacing, I think I'm gonna try to do like around a foot between plants because brassicas, like I said, can get pretty large. And I really want these to be able to get as big as possible because the bigger they get, the bigger my produce will be. So after planting out my first 5 plants, I'm realizing that I think I need to put these a little bit closer to one another. I have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 plants to fit into this one bed, or that's what I was hoping for. So maybe I'll try to squeeze them in a little bit closer than I have right now, and I can keep a couple extra plants to plant out elsewhere in the garden. But I think I'm gonna have to plant these a little bit closer. So I will start again here. So I think this one is still in a good place because like I said, I don't want to get too close to the edge here, but I'll move these guys over slightly. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. I moved them down this way and a little bit down this way. So maybe I could do like one here and kind of stagger them a little bit and do 3 rows is what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna do the farro cabbage next and just continue this line here. So these ones get a little bit bigger than the baby cabbage. So they will likely need a little bit more space, but I'm hoping that they'll still get quite large, even if they're a little bit more jammed up next to one another. These ones look really good. I'll give you a better close-up. Those are beautiful cabbage. Aren't the frog calls beautiful? There are so many frog eggs in the pond right now. It's pretty crazy. We're about to have a lot of baby frogs in the yard, which I really love. I love when I find them in the garden. And hopefully they are eating some of the mosquito larvae that are in the pond too, because there's quite a bit when I checked yesterday. So I was also hoping to start some like bok choy and toi choy and pak choy seeds in this bed too, because I want all my brassicas to be covered because the flea beetles just decimate them. And then of course the cabbage moths as well. But I think I'm gonna run out of space. So I'm gonna fill this with actual plants for now, get the hoop house over it, and then if there's no space in this bed, then I'll probably, the bed next to this one, I could fill next. This is where my potatoes and my lettuce I was planning to grow, so I could probably do a little mini hoop house in that bed. Okay, so next up I have a green magic, which is a broccoli. Oh, there's 3 in this batch here. Just take these 2 off and I'll try to plant them somewhere else in my garden. So I've had one really good brassica year, and then I've found that all years after that, I've either gotten a lot of flea beetles that have done damage, deer have done a lot of damage too, or the cabbage moths. So this year I'm really hoping that the hoop house makes a big difference, and of course I have a deer fence. And I haven't noticed any deer damage in a while, so hopefully this continues and they don't find my brassicas. But yeah, I find brassicas to be one of the trickier crops to grow because so many things like to eat them, including us. And then this next 5, these are all burgundy broccoli. So these are a purple variety, which look really, really pretty. I can put a photo here so you can see what they look like. And if you do notice that some of your brassicas are a little like long in the stem, you can plant them a little bit deeper because you do want to make sure that they feel pretty secure in the bed. All right, second row done. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 15 more plants to put into the garden, but I only have 10 spaces left in this bed. So I think I'm gonna do 3 Brussels sprouts because I really would like some garden Brussels. I've had a few years of really good Brussels sprouts, but once the cabbage moth worms get into the Brussels sprouts, they just ruin it. I don't want to bite into a Brussels sprout that has a worm in it. So I'm going to keep these 3 in here, and then I'll plant the other 2 out somewhere else in the garden. Maybe they'll almost be like a trap crop for the flea beetles and the cabbage moths, which is also nice. And then next I have floret cauliflower. So I actually have never tried this variety before. I tried to plant it last fall as like a fall crop, but it didn't end up having enough time to actually produce any cauliflower. So hopefully it does well in the garden this year. So I'll probably do 3 of these. Okay, so that's 3 of the Brussels sprouts, 3 of the floret cauliflower, and then I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Asperbrock broccolini, which I actually have had pretty good success with, so I'm happy to give it the extra spot because I know it does well in my garden. And yeah, I don't think I'm gonna have any space for any of the brassica seeds to start in this bed. I did try again last year when I did a little bit of a fall planting of brassicas. I did plant some bok choy and pak choy seeds. And because all of my seedlings that I had grown grew so much bigger, quicker, they shaded out all of that stuff, so I feel like that's probably going to happen in this bed too. So to avoid that, I think I'll just plant them in their own bed with things that get roughly the same size as they do. Okay, so now that the bed is full, I'm going to work on putting up my arches for the tunnel. But actually first, I'm gonna give these a little bit of a water. Okay, everything's been watered now, so I'm gonna work on putting these posts in. These are just little posts I actually got from like the dollar store, I'm pretty sure. They are, as you expect, not great, and they broke really easily, which is actually nice because I broke them up into these smaller sections, and at this size they're pretty sturdy. And then all I'm going to do is put them into the ground and then use this tubing that I got from Home Depot to create my arches for my tunnel. So I'm just going to try to work on spacing these out evenly. Because one thing I found last year when I did a tunnel like this is that I didn't have them spaced closely enough together, so that it was pretty flimsy in the wind. So I want to make sure that I have some good spacing this time around. I think that should be good. And then I just have a hammer here to help me put these into the soil here. And I basically just want them level to the soil, and then these tubes can slip over top of them and into the soil so I can get them roughly the same height. So next I'm just going to take this tubing. This is just a tube that I got from Home Depot, and I'm going to slip it over each end of the posts. And I'm just going to have to kind of eyeball the length of each piece to make sure that they're all relatively the same height, because I have made this bed in the past where some have been a little bit higher than others, and it really makes it hard to put the frost cloth over top of it. So I'm gonna try to keep them all the same height if I can. So if you are making your own hoop house, you can buy clamps to clamp on the fabric to your hoops. But I've just been cutting small pieces of tube like this, and you just cut a line through vertically. And then you essentially have a little clamp that you can use to clamp on the fabric to your tubes. So that's my brassica tunnel. No flea beetles or cabbage moths are going to be eating my brassicas this year. But anyways, let's move on to the onions. Okay, let's plant some onions now. So I have several varieties of onions here. So I have Ailsa Craig, Patterson. For my red onions, I had Red Wing. And I will say the Patterson, the Red Wing, and the Calibra, these are all storage onions. So these will all store for months if they are cured properly. So I grow these varieties every year because I like to store a ton of onions, as you can see. I have a lot of onions started, so I want to be able to store as many of them as I can. But I also have some other varieties this year. I'm trying to find them all. So I have Walla Walla. These aren't a storage onion, but these are a classic onion. And then the Ailsa Craig is another one. These are the ones that get massive. If you've ever seen photos of really big onions, they're usually Ailsa Craigs. What else do we have here? Oh, something I do want to share is I've been wondering if trimming your onions actually results in bigger onion bulbs. I don't know if you've seen that garden hack. So I did a little experiment this winter / spring where I cut back one container. This is my trimmed Calibra onions, and then I have a container of non-trimmed Calibra onions. There's roughly the same amount of onions in both containers, so I'm going to do a little experiment and see which ones end up being bigger bulbs or if there's any difference between the two. I didn't trim any of my other onions this spring, so everything is untrimmed, which is why they're so big. But yeah, I have some leeks, more leeks, some Zabroon shallots. These are shallots that I really like, so I have a bunch of these, and they store really well too. These ones didn't start going bad until maybe February, but I didn't grow a ton last year, so I'm growing a lot more because I didn't want to run out this upcoming season. So I think I'm going to start off by planting my experimental onions. So I have my trimmed and my control, and I think I'm going to do them in this back corner of the garden there so that I can really keep track of which onions are coming out of the garden and making sure that I weigh them, because I want to keep track of how big all of these onions are so we can actually see if one produces bigger onions than the other. So I'm going to do that at the back, and I'm really going to make sure that I demarcate where they are so I know which group they came from. Okay, I just got this stick so that I can really mark off each side of my experiment here. So I'm gonna do my trimmed onions on this side and my control on this side. And these are both Calibra onions. I don't know if I've said that already. And when I'm planting onions, I like to plant them in trenches. So I'm gonna make 3 trenches here, and then I like to side dress with bone meal. But I actually just might put the bone meal right in the bottom of the trench for right now, just to make it a little bit easier since I have so many onions to do. So I'll just sprinkle some of this bone meal right underneath the seedlings. And because it's bone meal, again, you can't really burn your roots. So I'll just kind of mix this into the soil, and then I'm gonna plant my onions right in these trenches. So the nice thing about onion seedlings is that their roots are super wiry, so they come apart really, really easily. Just like that, I don't know if you can see. And then when you're planting them, you don't want to plant them too deep, because if the soil is too compact around the onion bulb, it actually won't bulb up as easily. And you really want to make it as easy for your onions to bulb as possible so that you get nice big onion bulbs. And I plant these about, I don't know, maybe that's 5 to 6 inches apart. Ooh. So in terms of these 2 containers, they don't have the exact same amount of onions, so I'm going to do 12 of each. I will say the trimmed onions were nice because they weren't, they were a little bit more manageable, I guess I should say. I could keep them under the grow lights in my basement, and they weren't like touching the lights or anything like that, which was nice. The other onions kind of got a little unruly. So we'll see, but like, look how beautiful that root is. I don't know if you can see that, but they're very nice, healthy roots. And I did end up trimming these twice, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of weeks. Okay, so I have a few more of the trimmed onion seedlings left here, but I'm not gonna let them go to waste. I'm just gonna throw this stuff in here. I'll plant those elsewhere within the bed. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And again, with some of the bone meal. And of course, this isn't a perfect experiment, because if it was, I'd probably be weighing this out to make sure that each side got exactly the same amount of bone meal. But, you know, it's just for fun. But I'll, again, mix this into each of the rows, and then plant my onions right into it. So I'm gonna do 12 of these as well. I will say that on first glance, these ones do look to be a little bit more bulbous than the trimmed ones. I don't know if that's just because maybe they had less onions growing in this pot than the trimmed onions did, but we'll see if this translates to the end of the season. Okay, I have just a couple little tiny ones left over from that as well. I'll plant those in the rest of the bed. So we have the experimental part of our bed done. So now I'm gonna plant the rest of this onion bed. I'm just gonna get the rest of these organized. So Calibra, Patterson, this is the Red Wing, this is Zabroon. These ones were started like maybe a month or 2 after the first batch, and Ailsa Craig. I actually think I'm gonna have more onions than I'm gonna be able to plant in this bed. So for right now, maybe I'll do trying to decide how to do this. There's just a few leeks. I'm gonna start with my storage onions in this bed, and then the non-storage ones I'll move over if I need to. It's really starting to get windy now. So last year I planted out my onions, I think on April 26th, and that was about 2 weeks before today. And we got a frost that was like -9. That was, of course, unexpected. And all my onions froze. I came outside and like all of the leaves were like frozen solid. I could like snap them. So needless to say, they didn't do so well. They did bounce back for the most part, but I did have to start a bunch of sets last year. So I held off this year until it, it was a lot nicer out. There are some days this week that have some lows, like -2, I think is the coldest I've seen. So worst case, I'll have to cover this bed. And I will do that this year if I do see a frost on the forecast. But onions should be able to handle -2. -9 though, not so much. Look at that beautiful seedling. That's a nice little onion. Okay, so I've done my Calibra and my Patterson onions now, and honestly, I think I'm gonna have enough space for everything. They look like bigger batches than they are, or bigger bunches than they are, so I'm gonna continue with the Red Wing onions next. And I find that if you have batch sown or bulk sown onions, it's easiest just to kind of shake them out to get all the soil off, and then you usually should be good in terms of ripping them apart. And my day is done. Thank you so much for spending the day with me, and I hope you have a great week in the garden.